guys, welcome back to the channel where I cover missing persons, unsolved cases, crime news, and more. Well, we are nearing, actually we're more than 9 months since Madalina Cojocari was last seen getting off her school bus in North Carolina. And we don't seem to have a lot of answers. Both her mother and stepfather have played the blame game, and I don't know, did you see her? I don't know, did you last see her? Where are you hiding her? Like it was some sort of object, like your remote control, or your cell phone, or your car keys. But Madalina is a real young child who should be in the 7th grade right now. She should have started her 7th grade year in August, yet we have no idea where she is. Her stepfather did recently bond out of jail, as we previously covered here on the channel. His bail was reduced to $25,000, and he was released on August 18th. He's being monitored, and he, of course, has an ankle monitor. And as far as her mother, Madalina Cojocari, well, she's still behind bars with a bond of $250,000. Both of them have pleaded not guilty to failing to report Madalina missing. There's, like I said, you've got Diana blaming her husband, and then you've got Christopher blaming Diana. So it's, like I said, it's the blame game, and then you've got Diana's mom claiming that it was all Christopher Palmiter's situation, and that he's the reason that she's gone. Again, we do not know, sadly, if she was sold to traffickers, or if she was taken by someone else. There were sightings of Mom Diana days later, and allegedly Christopher went to Michigan to get something from that family, that side of the family's home. And then, of course, when he came back, Madalina was gone, and that's when the blame game commenced for 3 weeks, until Diana had to admit to Madalina's school that she had no idea where her daughter was. 3 weeks were lost. And as we know, the first few hours are so critical in a case, and especially in a case of a missing child. News Nation did a live stream today, and I'm going to play it and pause it along the way. It was very good, and I kind of want to go through it, because again, this is a case that I'm praying so hard that this sweet young girl is safe somewhere. I really hope that she's found. We just have too many kids missing, and my heart breaks every single time. So let's check out the News Nation piece.
I'm Marnie Hughes, and this is Missing on News Nation. Each week, we focus on a missing person case from across the country, taking you behind the headlines.
New video of Madalina Cojocari, the latest effort by Cornelius Police to keep the case on people's minds.
Anything and everything we can do to draw attention to this case so that we can hopefully find the information that we need to lead us to her.
In an exclusive interview with News Nation, the police chief talking about the efforts to bring Madalina home.
I can say with confidence that we have followed up on hundreds of leads and spent thousands of man hours.
It's been more than 9 months since these last images of Madalina getting off her school bus November 21st. Police say Madalina Cojocari told them she last saw her daughter at their home on Wednesday night, November 23rd. Diana and her husband, Christopher Palmer, had an argument, and he drove to his family's home in Michigan. When Diana went to check on Madalina on Thanksgiving morning, she wasn't there. A backpack of clothing and some of her favorite toys also gone. Both parents face charges for not reporting her missing for 3 weeks. Now, two conflicting theories are emerging about what happened to the girl.
I don't believe Diana's story at all. And I don't know what to think about Christopher's either. I don't know if it's been confirmed publicly that I've heard that he went to Michigan, but I would really like to know the answer to that one. I have not seen law enforcement confirm that piece of information, but I find it hard to believe that Diana just walked in and her daughter was gone with a backpack, her clothes, and toys. Madalina is not like a young child, so like I said, there's kind of some red flags in the way Diana describes the last time she allegedly saw her daughter.
The attorney for Christopher Palmer says his client has cooperated with police and believes the girl is being hidden away by her mother.
He believed that Diana had taken Madalina somewhere up into the mountains. He tells detectives specifically that he believes Diana took her somewhere and that she is safe.
The reason, Palmer says Diana believed he put Madalina in danger by naming her as a beneficiary on an investment account.
In these interviews that Chris gave to the police, he's adamant that he does not believe that Diana harmed Madalina. He believes that Diana fervently believes that Madalina is in danger from some unknown third party, apparently related to him placing money and assigning benefits to her in a 401k account, something that doesn't make any sense.
According to police, in a text message on December 2nd, more than a week after the disappearance, Diana indicated she was in the presence of the missing girl. It was the same day she allegedly had extensive conversations with a male cousin, identified as Octavian Sebanu, about smuggling her and Madalina away from Palmer.
This particular line of thinking from Christopher so far is probably the most believable, at least in my opinion. I really do wonder about Octavian. And again, the fact that she was spotted in the mountains and someone actually even spotted her met Diana in another vehicle sleeping, from what I understand. I'm starting to believe she passed off Madalina to Octavian. And I'm hoping, if that's the case, that Madalina is safe, as Christopher is hoping as well.
On December 3rd, Diana was seen in the city of Hickory, an hour west of her home, getting her oil changed. The attendant says there were children's toys in the car, but no child was present. And the Madison County Sheriff's Office confirms to News Nation on the night of December 4th, a deputy encountered Diana sleeping in her car near Lonesome Mountain. News Nation traveled to the mountains of western North Carolina to investigate a possible sighting of Madalina. On December 16th, a woman reported seeing a girl resembling Madalina with a male companion.
There was a possible sighting at the Lowe's Foods here in Sugar Mountain. We were able to track down video, still footage of that, and forwarded that to Cornelius.
But police say the sighting and another one in California did not turn out to be Madalina. Still, the area is vast, and outdoor experts say it would be easy to stay hidden.
There's a lot of remote locations here. It would be easy to hide somebody if you really wanted to, or to spend time away from anything you want.
Just a lot of open space, a lot of places without internet or cell phone signal, a lot of woods, a lot of roads that go way off and dead end.
Also revealed in the affidavits, recorded jail calls, one between Palmer and his brother, saying Diana had a lot of cash with her and he didn't know where it came from. And another call between Diana and her mother, discussing a bag of money, withdrawing cash, and a theory that Chris gave the girl away for money.
Yeah, I'm starting to believe as well that Madalina is somewhere in Western North Carolina, or at least she was in Western North Carolina. Seems that seems to be the biggest tip that I'm seeing for, and unfortunately the spotting at the Lowe's was unfounded, and there was a, like they said, the other one in California, and I read about that on one of the Facebook groups that someone had some young girl ask her that she needed help, and thankfully that was not Madalina, but I still wonder who that child was and if that was another missing child. But all this talk about insurance policies, and Diana supposedly had a bunch of money, and then she tells her mother that she has a bunch of money, and then of course she's throwing the blame at Christopher, saying, oh, Christopher sold Madalina. Again, another theory is that he took Madalina with him when he left the home to go to Michigan. So that would be theory number 2 that I have. But I really believe that since she stated in the text message that she was in the presence of Madalina in those texts after Christopher would have left the home, seems to me that she was with her mother, and then Christopher came back from his trip and she was no longer there.
Acclaimed Diana's mother, speaking in Russian, repeated to reporters outside the courthouse.
Мои дети попали у трафикантов для детей. Моя внучка живая, ее продали вместе с Дианой за $5 миллионов.
Warrants show police have combed through the couple's financial records, as well as social media, messaging accounts, and phone data. Cornelius police saying only they are looking into every lead.
We're taking everything that the grandmother has said into consideration during this investigation, and we're following up on all possibilities. But we have no indication right now that there's any sort of trafficking ring in our community.
Diana's mom, laying out photos on the sidewalk, asked if she has a message for Madalina.
Очень люблю. И Мадалину, и Диану. Очень люблю. Диана у меня.
Both parents have pleaded not guilty to charges of failing to report a missing child.
Either Grandma, Diana's mom, either she is believing Diana, and this is my opinion, she's believing everything that comes out of Diana's mouth, or she knows more. That's the impression I'm getting personally.
Palmater released August 18th after posting a reduced bail of $25,000, ignoring questions from reporters.
Christopher, where is Madalina? Where is Madalina? Where is Madalina?
The Cornelius police chief pledging his department will not give up.
I am confident we will solve this case and we will find Madalina.
Again, I agree with the police chief. I applaud, I really applaud the work that Cornelius PD and all the other departments that they have been able to work with through all these tips. And of course the FBI. I believe she's going to be found, and myself I try to be a victim's advocate here on the channel as well. I will do everything I can to share her photos and get the word out about her, and you could help if you're watching this video and you want to help as well. Share her missing poster. You could share the videos. I've got other videos. I have a playlist for her. I will post that the link to that in the information of the video. Any and everything we can do to keep Madalina's face and name out there is very important. All right, now they're going to get to a bit of discussion, answering some questions about the case.
and it has been 9 months, and she remains missing. Diana Cojocari, Madalina's mother, remains in jail with a bond set at $250,000. As you watch this case, I know you have questions, so I encourage you to participate. If you have questions, whatever social media you're watching on now, you can submit those questions. We'll do our best to answer them to the best of our ability. Joining me now, trial attorney Misty Maris, also News Nation contributing legal mind. Thank you. As you look at this case, I'm curious what stands out to you legally, because it is unraveled into quite a web with two different theories.
Absolutely. So what stands out to me the most, first of all, we have the failure to report Madalina gone missing for a very long time, right? 3 weeks. The law, Kaylee's law, kicks in after 24 hours when somebody, a parent, knowingly does not report a missing child. So that's part one. The other part that sticks out to me is that they didn't come eventually willingly to report Madalina missing. Instead, the school said, we need to see Madalina. We haven't seen her in a certain period of time. So that, to me, that all leads to that intent element for that particular part of the case.
Most definitely. Those are two big parts of it, that they did not report Madalina missing for 3 weeks. And neither Diana nor Christopher came forward willingly. They kept giving excuses and ignoring the school's calls, ignoring the knocks at the door, excuses after excuses. And it wasn't until they threatened them that Diana went to the school and said, I don't know where my daughter is. Lots of red flags right there. Lots of red flags.
Now, keep in mind, the mother is still being held. The stepfather's out on bond. He's cooperating, providing information. We learned a lot of new things from these warrants. And I'm thinking, and look, behind the scenes, once child trafficking is implicated, that is federal. So while this is still being investigated by the local law enforcement, I imagine behind the scenes, you have federal law enforcement investigating this case and seeing if there's other charges that may potentially be brought against Madalina's mother. And I think all of that is happening simultaneously. Whether or not there's merit to what the grandmother said, we don't know. But I can't imagine that there isn't a feverish investigation into that, because the reason for Kaylee's law is that you lose a lot. You lose a lot of time. 48 hours is the critical time frame, Marnie, for a missing person.
Yeah.
And so when somebody is not reported missing, video might be erased, potential witnesses who could give an idea of where somebody was last seen. All of that can be lost. That's the reasoning behind the law. And so in this particular case, I think that law enforcement is really working on that investigation to establish what happened and possibly bring more charges.
Right.
Exactly. It all comes down to deception, because they did not tell anybody, and the failure to report deception. And you've got, now there could be video that has been re-recorded over, deleted, evidence that just doesn't exist anymore. The more and more time that goes by in these cases, it's just the evidence starts to dwindle. And that does not mean that there's not evidence and there's not clues and there's not good tips that they're getting, because as they've stated, they have a lot of tips. But like they said, 3 weeks. I mean, 48 hours, if they waited 2 or 3 days, that would have been bad enough. But they waited 3 weeks. To me, it's like there's just so much going on there. And even if Christopher say it was Diana, let's go with that Diana took Madalina, passed her off to Octavian or someone else to, quote unquote, keep her safe from Christopher. Okay? She comes home, then Christopher comes home, and they play the blame game about where Madalina is, and there's also reports that they were out lovey-doveying and acting like their life was so great without Madalina being home. And obviously they didn't care when the school and others asked about their daughter. So Christopher, as far as I'm concerned, even if he didn't have anything to do with the disappearance of Madalina, he should have reported that his stepdaughter was missing. He should have reported that immediately. He should have said, I came home, I went out of state for a few days, I came home, and my wife says that her daughter is just gone. She doesn't know where she is. And guess what? They would have looked into it immediately. Immediately. And then if on the flip side, if Christopher had something to do with it, then Diana didn't say anything for the same period of time. So as far as I'm concerned, this is exactly why the two of them have been charged with failure to report. Because neither one of them said a damn thing. It doesn't, yeah, it does matter who or if both of them were responsible for her disappearance, passing her off, what have you, okay? But the fact is, neither one of them cared enough about the well-being of this sweet child to tell the authorities that she was gone, if their partner was the one who made it happen.
You've got a little girl who hasn't been seen. You've got two people who were last responsible for her who have conflicting stories. I would be curious if they're trying to throw investigators off the scent, because the information they're sharing, they did so while they were incarcerated, right? Jailhouse calls between their family members. So you have to wonder about both of their credibility and where the truth lies in these two stories.
Marty, you're absolutely right. And jailhouse calls and jailhouse confessions are notoriously questionable. There are always issues with respect to credibility because of exactly what you said. Are they calculated? Are they for the purpose of creating a narrative behind bars while the rest of the investigation is being unraveled? That being said, they're also taken seriously because on one hand, the jailhouse call can be questionable because of all of those issues of credibility. But on the other hand, it could be that these jailhouse calls, meetings with family members, they're not on guard at the moment. They think they're having private conversations, even though it is disclosed in every jail, in every prison, that those calls are recorded and those calls are fair game. Oftentimes, when those meetings are happening, when they're speaking to family members from behind bars, they're not on their A game. They're making statements that they might not be in their best interest. And that's why the calls are recorded, for one thing, in order to assess whether or not there's evidence relating to another crime.
Criminals aren't too smart. See, so one of them, if not both of them, and they both obviously are charged with, they both are guilty of the one crime of the failure to report. But criminals aren't too smart, so they like to talk and then they realize later on that, oh crap, I may have let something slip out, or they thought they were being sneaky in some way. So I tend to think that some reason Diana just seems to me to be, personally, my opinion is she seems to be more of the deception. I feel like she's the more the deceptive one of the two. I could be wrong, but I do lean toward the theory that she's the one that's responsible for her disappearance. And also, Christopher had an undercover officer in the prison with him for a period of time. So he's been monitored closely as well. I don't know if Diana's had one. I haven't heard that, but I do know it was confirmed that there was an undercover that was in jail with Christopher. So the cops, the feds, they have a lot more information than we are aware of, and than what we know so far. And it baffles my mind that neither one of these two are willing to speak up for the welfare of a young child.
So yes, they are scrutinized, but they're valuable as well.
Right. And if you are the defense team for mom, Diana Cojocari, are you concerned that Chris Palmiter was released on bond, that his bond was reduced and he's on an ankle monitor and she's still behind bars?
Definitely, because in that situation, and we heard it from his lawyer's statement, he's obviously cooperating, right? He's cooperating with prosecutors. He's giving a narrative. He's telling a story. And then he's out on bond. Meanwhile, the mother is still behind bars. And a lot of that is judicial discretion, especially in North Carolina. So every state has different rules, a lot of discretion in North Carolina when it comes to a felony charge. So the fact that he's out and she's in as a defense lawyer, first of all, I'd be making a lot of arguments about why she should be out as well. But on the flip side, as a defense lawyer, your guard goes up because you think there's more to this, right? It's not just this charge. There's more under that layer as part of the investigation. And so I would imagine her lawyers are keying up to see when is the shoe going to drop, right? What's the next step? And that would be the signal from this particular situation where one person is out on a relatively low bond that was actually reduced and the other person, no bail. So it's really a sign for sure.
And why would you argue she should be out? What's her defense?
I would argue right from the get-go that this is, you really can't be held for more than 120 days under the law. And I would argue based on the North Carolina law that she's not a threat to the public. This is what matters for bail, right? Not a threat to the public and not a flight risk. Those are the two main factors. So you would ankle monitoring, you would say there's other less aggressive means of keeping her in the country and she's not a threat to anybody. She has one criminal charge, I believe, a felony drug conviction, or a felony drug charge that was dismissed. So she doesn't have a felony record. And the drug charge isn't related to the charge she's currently being held on. So those are all the arguments you would make. I imagine because she'd been communicating and that one email where she says, smuggle me and Madalina out of the country, that's probably what's being used by prosecutors to hold her, because that is flight risk, that the alarms are going off from a flight risk perspective.
Yeah, I don't think that they're afraid that she's going to hurt anybody, but I think they're more afraid that she's going to disappear out of the country. And that's very, very possible. I could foresee that happening, and for sure, I could just see her trying to get out of the country, go back home with her mom, and for all we know that they'll, wherever Madalina is, she'll end up in the same place. So, yeah, I think that that's exactly what they're thinking, the state. They're thinking that we let Diana out, just like we let Christopher out, even if we put her on an ankle monitor, and even if they watch her carefully, who's to say she's not going to somehow escape the country? She's a flight risk as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, she's not a danger, but she is definitely a flight risk.
That's something that she might have the capability to do.
I have a few questions from viewers, and I think I might be able to answer some of them, Misty, and then I have another legal question for you. One of our viewers, Harper 2.0 on Twitter, is asking if it was proved that Madalina was seen or not seen with Octavian, who is the family cousin, on Sugar Mountain in December. And I can tell you that we talked to police in that area of Sugar Mountain. They did confirm that there was a possible sighting, but police in Cornelius have said it was not Madalina in this case. I've got another question this is from Tiffany Ross on YouTube. She wants to know if Chris and Diana have spoken since the release. We don't have an answer to that question, but I have one about the property being checked from Eastern Girls 1969. Have they checked their whole property? The answer to that is yes. They had been doing some burning of furniture in their backyard, and that was taken into evidence. Neighbors thought that was very peculiar. In this case, what were they burning? Why were they doing it? It was around the time that Madalina had vanished but had not yet been reported. So very peculiar. Good questions from everybody who is watching. My question for you, Misty, is we don't know if a crime has been committed. We know this little girl is gone. We can assume that something against her will has happened to her. Mom's not talking. Stepdad says, this is what I think happened. For a prosecutor, though, to charge a crime, I hope she's alive. If she's not, do they need a body to charge either of them in a crime? And can they do so without that?
So they can. By the way, Marty, just note, those are all excellent questions. Wow, the viewers have such a detailed eye to this case, which is so important because that's the reason we covered this on News Nation, right, to raise awareness. So kudos to the viewers. As far as your question, no body murder cases are more difficult to prove, but they're not impossible. You can have circumstantial evidence that tends to show that somebody is no longer alive. The reason that they're difficult to prove is because the body is the best piece of evidence in a case. It can show the means and manner and time of death. So without a body, it can be more challenging, but other evidence can be sufficient to prove a no-body case in a court of law. With respect to this case, definitely they are working behind the scenes to further the investigation. And that's why you see her being held on a charge that is relating to the time frame it took her to report Madalina missing. That is always going to be suspect when a parent does not report their child missing. And so that's why we're seeing this continue to unfold and investigators continue to be looking at her conduct and looking for evidence relating to that time frame. So not impossible, but definitely need more to charge at this juncture from what we've seen in the public sphere.
Right. And I guess just the optics of it, you know, when you have a child go missing, if the parents aren't screaming from the rooftop immediately when they go missing, right, you start to wonder, you know, your little spidey senses go up. Any normal person would say, my child's missing, you do everything you can to find them. It didn't happen in this case, so it raised a lot of suspicion. Then you add money into the mix. How does that complicate an investigation and their legal defense?
It acts as a motive, right? So now when there's money in the mix, investigators are going to be looking at the money. They're going to follow the money, and they're going to see the potential for financial gain as a possible motive. So from a prosecutor perspective, that is a really key factor as they continue to develop a potential case. Now, from a defense perspective, you're already on alert here to say that, number one, money can't be a motivating factor if you did nothing wrong, right? So money is ancillary if you're not responsible for the disappearance of the child. So I imagine defense attorneys are going to focus on that. But of course, if the money factor comes into play, we spoke about this before, prosecutors do not have to show motive in a court of law in order to obtain a conviction. But by gosh, it helps, especially when you're talking about a child, because everybody is going to have the question that you just said, Marnie. How could a parent not be shouting from the rooftops when their child is missing? How could a parent be so callous about the situation? And so then you factor in the money component, and it helps a jury to be able to wrap their mind around the why. And that's going to be incredibly important if this case goes to trial. And I think that lag in time, plus the money, and then if they get a lead on something else, well, maybe then you have a case. Maybe then you have a case for sure.
So I definitely agree with her as far as that it's all about the money. I think that a lot of crimes, you have to follow the money. And if Diana or Chris came into some money at the time around the time of Madalina's disappearance, that's suspicious. Why would they come into money? So you would have to follow where that money came from, and hopefully that would lead to Madalina. And as far as having remains or having a body, they don't, like she said, they don't have to have one. It's more difficult, especially for a jury, if they don't have, remains to convict on. I think in Madalina's case, at this point, without more evidence, it would be hard to prove that she's no longer here. We have the Harmony Montgomery case with Adam, as far as his probable cause affidavit, and I completely believe it, even though I have a large disdain and dislike for Kayla. Once I read that he murdered his daughter. And even though they have some DNA, some bodily fluids from their searches, and they have Kayla's testimony. They don't have her remains because Adam refuses to say where she is, and up until now, and he'll probably up until his dying breath, which is just horrific to me, he's gonna probably refuse to admit that he killed his daughter. He can't even admit that he did this. So, and I think as far as her case, I think that's going to be a lot easier to prove due to the witnesses and the evidence. I like to, at this point, I'm leaning toward that she is with someone or some people. Hopefully she's safe, as we've put it out there and law enforcement has stated as well. Trafficking is a theory. It's a possibility. So I would say that I'm just going to lean toward that she's out there, and Diana or Christopher had something to do with where she is right now. And all we can do is pray and hope that she's found. And like I said, we need to keep her face and her name out there. And, we need to make sure that everyone knows who the sweet girl is. Because who knows? Who knows? You could be the one that's out on vacation, or, you're out somewhere and maybe you spot her. They've had at least a couple. We had the California, which didn't turn out to be her. Of course, they stated, they've had the Lowe's Food Mart spotting of a potentially Madalina, which wasn't her as well. So, because that her face is out there, people are calling in these tips that they may have seen her. And I think that, like, as advocates, and we need to make sure that we do whatever we can to help law enforcement, help, everything that we can. That's what we need to do. Our job is to keep her face and her name, her story out there. Because we're not investigators. Our job isn't to figure out if Christopher or Diana's guilty. Our job is to help advocate for her and to say, hey, this young, sweet child is missing. Have you seen her? So I'm going to share her poster right now on the screen as well. And right before I close out the video, I'm going to share again the bus footage. That's the last footage that we have at this point that police have put out. She was last seen in November 2022 getting off of her school bus. Because I think these images in that school bus footage is very, very important. Watch her mannerisms while she's getting off of that bus. I think she looks nervous and concerned. Let me know what you think in the comments. And yeah, let's do our best to share this beautiful girl out there. And let's bring Madalina home. Alright guys, that's all I've got for this one. I hope you have a great rest of the day. And most of all, stay safe.